we are team 2 of the business communication course. And before we start with our real presentation, we first want to tell you a little story. Once there was a daughter, who we will call Anna from now on. Anna was a wonderful daughter with unconditional love for her mother. Her mother had always taken good care of her and they had a good relationship together. However, Anna was having some problems of her own, about which she did not talk to anyone. She just kept them to herself. Sadly, when Anna was a grown-up, her mother got sick. The diagnosis was given. It was dementia. Anna was devastated. Her mother was everything to her, and so she was determined to take care of her from that moment on. Anna started her new role as a caretaker with good sense. However, after a few years, this caretaker role became too heavy for her. She kept on taking care of her mother with her best intents, but she noticed she was not fully committed. In addition, she could not leave her own personal problems at home to be able to focus on her mother for a few hours. This led to Anna not being able to provide the best suitable care for her mother anymore. Anna knew that something needed to change, and that there had to be a better way. She was desperately trying to do better for her mother when she received an invitation. The invitation was from a dementia-related project that promised to help her with her problems. She accepted the invitation and participated in the program, and it turned out to be a life-changing experience. Anna learned how to leave her emotional baggage behind, and so she was able to focus on her mother and to help her and take care of her with the love and devotion she had always felt but could not fully express before. Anna was happier than ever in her caretaker role, and so was her mother with the great care she was receiving from her daughter.
Okay, thank you, Esme, for the introduction to our proper presentation today. And I think at first it would be nice to just introduce ourselves. So we are group 2 into dementia, and my name is Ina, and I'm going to tell you something about basic facts for dementia. And then it's Patricia's turn to continue how it all began with an Into Dementia project. And after that it's Amy's turn to tell you about the simulator itself. And after that, the last part, it's going to be to Chasing the World, and it's Julia's turn. So I think all of us have some kind of idea what is the dementia all about, but unfortunately we can know what are the really impacts for the disease if we don't have a real experience. So dementia is not a specific disease, it's just an overview term which describes different kind of brain illnesses with memory problems and problems with thinking, which cause some kind of problems to your daily life because you are not able to perform your daily activities anymore. And in 2011 we had 36 million dementia patients worldwide, which is quite a lot, and just in Netherlands it was 270,000, which means at the same time we had over 700,000 caretakers. They are the family members and the carriers who have to take care of these patients. And it is said in World Health Organization's website that it's projected to increase to over 75 billion by 2030. And that means a new case of dementia is diagnosed every 4 seconds, so 15 new patients every minute, which is quite a lot. So the basic impacts of that illnesses are at first economic, of course, because the increasing problem with this illness is worldwide, and it's gonna be a very challenging for the health organization of every country in the world. Another very important part is the emotional overwhelming for both the patient and the caregivers as well, because the caregivers have to experience this daily life problems with the patients, and it's gonna be very stressful because they can't understand fully what the patients are going through. So they just need a support by the health, social, financial and legal systems. And what is needed for the future and what is the Into Dementia program is all about, we just want to increase the awareness and experiences concerning to the dementia itself. And with that better understanding, we can help not only for the patients but also all of the caregivers of these patients.
Okay. We had the privilege to interview Jan Ritsema, who told us about how it all began. Physical conditions, such as blindness, are relatively easy to simulate. But what about mental conditions? With this in mind, along with the determination of making technology work for people, Jan Ritsema and his team came up with the idea of a dementia simulator. In the early stages of the project, about 6 years ago, the simulator was conceived to help people in charge of developing dementia-related products. They were having difficulties with designing those products because nobody really understood what it is like to live with dementia. Along the way, it became clear that the simulator could actually be really useful to help the people taking care of the patients, and so the target group changed to caregivers. Into Dementia was born. The process of developing the project was not easy. First, the team had to explore the idea, for which they started collaborating with care institutes, the Department of Neuropsychology in Tilburg University, and Alzheimer Netherlands. The question was, how do we simulate the disease so that it stimulates empathy? After a feasibility study, the previously named the development of a business model and some fundraising, a consortium was built between the previously named institutions as well as VU University Amsterdam, companies offering training for caregivers, and the gaming industry. And the development of the project started. Into Dementia contributes to social innovation in two distinct fashions. On the one hand, it takes care of the caregiver, providing them with the insight to better perform their role, while improving the relationship between both the caregiver and the caretaker, increasing their quality of life. On the other hand, the development of the project has created a bridge between many different parties. Establishing these links and being able to work together with a common purpose is yet another dimension of social innovation.
I'm going to talk to you about the simulator of Into Dementia. What Patricia and Ina already told you is that no medicine or therapy is expected in the upcoming 20 years for dementia patients. So they were searching for managing the circumstance of people who are having the disease. And the simulator was developed by a consortium of many companies in the Netherlands. And this simulator, I will give you a short film of the simulator so you can have, so you can see how it works. But the simulator, in 1 hour, the simulator will help carers understand the persons with dementia even better. So in 1 hour, it will help them understand the disease.
Oh, the sound?
So,
Yeah, here. Just need
hoeveel
to
heb je er? De deur open. De sleutel.
wind it up. Yeah, we got it.
Gelukt. Binnen. Thuis. Sleutels. Onze tas.
that was an example of how the simulator works. It's a cabin where an everyday kitchen is simulated, so you can just walk in an everyday kitchen and you can experience, you have keys but you don't know which key you're going to open the door with, and you have like a radio and you don't know how it works, or where is my refrigerator, I have all this stuff, all these groceries and I don't know where to put it. So a carer can really experience how someone with dementia is experiencing everyday life. And even the carer is going to experience things that people with dementia are experiencing, as confusion, anxiety, alienation and maturity. Since 2012, 4,000 people have conducted this training in this cabin. And from these 4,000 people, 95% of these caregivers gained new insights in how to care for people with dementia. So the cabin really gave positive effects throughout the Netherlands on this part. And the outcome of the simulator is that care is going to be better and people with dementia can stay in their homes longer.
So I will talk a little bit about how the project could really change the world, or change how the disease is treated and how we all deal with it. The thing with dementia is that not only the patients are directly affected, but their entire social network is affected. So the relatives taking care of them, for example, can no longer go to work, and if they want to go to work, maybe they're really stressed, or they have, because of the huge workload they have at home taking care of the relatives, they're not able to perform that well. Thus, the costs of dementia are huge. Only in 2010, it cost more than $600 billion all over the world. And that's not only the direct costs of treating it, but also the indirect costs of people not going to work. So the project could have a huge economic impact. To show that a little bit better, we see the map where which countries are mostly affected by dementia, and 70% of the 600 billion spent or costs caused by dementia are only from North America and Europe. Well, this is pretty logical because they have the best developed health systems. Also, Japan, you can see them pretty bad, and Australia, and with longer life expectancy, it gets more and more likely to become a patient of dementia. But this trend will shift a little bit in the future, because most of the new patients with dementia will probably come from developing countries. So the impact on the world economy will be way bigger than it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. If you see these numbers, 150 million or 135 million patients in 2050, the cost would be exponentially higher by then. So the thing is, the question is, how can we improve the life and how can we all benefit from a project like this dementia? Dementia itself, the project as it is now, is pretty cost intensive, because it is a whole container. You have to build it up somewhere, you have all the strains that go behind it and stuff. So the question is, how do we spread it all over the world? Into Dementia started working on an application for virtual reality. That's the goggles you put on, and this would make it easy accessible all over the world, because they are getting pretty well known and more people have them, and you would just simply download the software and you could do it in your home, in your whatever room, and you could simulate it there. With that, the access would be way higher, but still it would be limited to rather wealthier countries, because still this goggle was not cheap. So the last innovation they are planning is a mobile app, and that could really revolutionize the whole thing, because pretty much everyone can afford nowadays a mobile phone, and in the future it's more likely that it's going to be a smartphone. So if everyone can simulate dementia on their smartphone, everyone will be able to improve the care, as we heard before. So everyone could everyone could benefit from it. Not only socially, because you know how to treat your mother, your dad, or your grandparents better, but also because you are able to work better on your regular job, so the whole economy and the whole society would benefit. We thank you very much for your attention. We hope you liked it.
Questions from the floor, please. Yes, sir.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. Really happy with this. I think it really captures the essence, as far as I know the story, from all the talks I've had with the people at Into Dementia over the years. Two questions. You say going the technology road. So first, one question is actually about Into Dementia as a project, and another is going to be about the storytelling aspect of it.
Okay.
So you say go the mobile road. It can be afforded by anybody and could go developing countries, etc. One important aspect of Into Dementia is that it's not just about raising the awareness through the simulator, or maybe in the future through mobiles or virtual reality, but especially also the follow-up. Like if you're a nurse, that you get training programs to know how to deal with people with dementia. If you are a nurse, so then you know what to do. If you're a caregiver, then you know how to deal with the emotional response that you have, and how to deal with the negativity and so on. So just an app, it's only half the story, basically. Any idea about how to scale that?
Okay, well, the information I just stated was from Jan, so he just briefly talked about it, so we don't know the details. But I would personally assume that you could develop the app further and have like a feedback afterwards, something like that, or maybe train the trainers and then make like a pyramid, and then it is still cheaper to send one person somewhere than to build up a container.
Sure. So it's a necessary condition that you need to scale it up.
Yeah, I think scaling it up would have like a true impact on the world, because until now the impact is pretty much limited to the Netherlands. And if we see that 4,000 caretakers have been to the simulator, then we could assume that maybe each of the participants gave on the information to 1 or 2 more people. But this means that maybe 10,000–15,000 people are directly affected until now by the simulation, which is, even for Netherlands, it's little when we know that we have 700,000 caretakers.
Yeah.
So scaling it up, even if the quality is not that good, scaling it up, I would personally say it's still better than nothing.
Yes, okay, good. Then a question about the storytelling aspects of it. So you have, and what's very nice on the blog also, how you have these different perspective stories from caregiver or professional. That's exactly what's needed. So you actually, what you see a lot in, let's say, the more traditional communication style about these projects is you have a communications department making one kind of bland PR story that's more factual, and that you really try to give these personal perspectives. So that was really nice to read. Do you have any ideas about how to go the next step, how to use these stories, how to make them actually catalyze the next steps in social innovation? Do you have any thoughts how? It's just an open question. It's not that you should have the answer, but maybe you have some ideas.
I mean, I think that the most valuable are the stories from the people who already have been in the simulator, because they can tell other people how they experienced it. And like we heard from like the interview with Red Mark, she told us that like almost everyone experienced some emotions, and most of them were really enthusiastic about the simulator. And I think if you have a lot of stories about people who really enjoyed it and have benefited from it, that will really help in the amount of people who will also experience the simulator.
So
Like
it can go,
references.
Yeah.
yeah, so it can go viral in a way.
Yeah,
Right.
and that people can, because people are most
Give
of
a
the time
grade or something.
yeah, because people are a bit anxious to do something new, and especially when you don't know what's going to happen in the simulator. And I think if you can, yeah, you don't have to read what they did in the simulator, but just that it helped from them, then I think people will be, yeah, more willing to also undergo the simulator.
So it can lower the access and entry barriers.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it's important to add that until now, from this 4,000 people, 80% have been professional caretakers. And I don't know if for them at home it's like a big issue to talk even further, even though they had a different project. But I think if they would concentrate more on the private person, on private caretakers, then the news would spread more easily.
I And I think that's the most important,
Yeah.
that the informal caretakers know more about their job.
Because they are the ones who really experience the daily stresses of
Yeah.
dealing with.
Yeah, because they are dealing with it like all the time. They can't go home and just relax and forget about it.
Yes, I know very much from personal experience in my circle about how deeply that can affect
Yeah.
people. So I think this could really help, and seeing that it's not a bureaucratic thing, but it's actually something that can really help you in your personal space. So yeah, that came across very nicely. Thank you.
Okay, one more. Go ahead.
Well, I thought it was very good to hear that 95% of the people that go in the simulator gave you insights. But I was wondering, how do they measure that or test it? Are they being interviewed afterwards? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
I worked for another project in which we measured that, and then we had questions before they entered the simulator and after, and then they could say like how empathic they felt, and it's also just measured like implicit, so they don't say it explicit, but that they thought it would improve their empathy. They just answered like questions, would implicitly measure it, and out of that study we have a couple of significant results that the empathy increased for them. And if you have more empathy, it's easier to take care.
Okay. Were there any further questions? Then I'll bring this one to a close. Thank you very, very much.